Hello, patrons. This is a random, unplanned, sort of general update video thing. I don't even know what this is, but I thought it would be interesting to talk to you guys about sort of how I'm looking at the future of my content, stuff that I'm planning to make, and what I'm planning to do on like my major videos going forward. Because I think that and this, I don't even know if this is true or not, but I feel like a lot of my patrons and my longtime fans are people who sort of have, expect me to do the more long form, bigger analytical projects. I think maybe this is just me, but I think my best videos tend to be the ones, or the ones I care about the most, are the ones where I explore something in a lot of depth. My big long series and longer videos. So I kind of want to talk about the future of those. What kind of ones I'll be making in the future, what kind of videos will be coming out in general, I guess. This might be a confusing way of putting things. But basically, going forward, actually, let me talk about how I've been thinking of this up until this point. Maybe that'll help to make this make sense. So, like, throughout most of my career, I've been thinking of my channel as like me trying to get through all these major ideas and videos that I've wanted to do for a long time. Most of the stuff I cover on here is stuff that, has been in the works forever, or is like a style of video I've always wanted to do. It's like something like Asterisk War came out of nowhere because that show came out, but the style of like going through a show and breaking it down on every single thing that it does wrong is something I've always wanted to do. And I've made a number of really big, huge expose kind of videos, like the Psycho-Pass versus Psycho-Pass one, stuff like that. And then I've also always wanted to do stuff like the Shinbo and Hideaki Anno videos where I explore someone's career. And I'd like to do more of that kind of stuff going forward. But I kind of always had it in my head that there's like an infinite amount of that stuff for me to cover. That there's just such a huge wealth of giant videos out there that I have to make. And it was almost stressful to like not know where to start, never quite sure which things I should be covering. I have this huge amount of shows that I loved back in the day that I haven't really had time to revisit, that I've always been thinking I'm going to end up covering those one day, or shows, or just ideas I've had for a long time. But as I've gone through these last 3 years, or 2.5 years of, yeah, I guess 3 years, 3 years of anime video making, I've been able to sort of figure out which things are gonna be interesting to cover. I've sort of taken a look at all the ideas I've had, all the shows I've wanted to talk about, and figured out what I would want to say about them. Because, for instance, for a long time I had it in my head that I'd go back to all these older shows that are interesting in one way or another, and I just write like analytical reviews of them in the way that I do modern shows like Konosuba or Erased or something, all those shows that I covered that way last year. And I over time I've come to think that that's pretty unnecessary, because most of those older shows, like, writing just a standard analytical review feels odd for a show that's older. It's like, why am I going back and picking this seemingly random show to present once again as I would any modern show? What's much more interesting to me is when I can slot older shows into a greater context. When I can take something and make a big point about anime in general and then put those older shows into it, or if I can follow a career that those shows are involved with. Like, when it comes to the sort of short, just making a point about a show, like talking about what's generally great about it, I feel like those matter the most when a show is new, when it's fresh. Like my video about Kabaneri or Erased or Konosuba or Sakamoto, those are all shows that were very in the moment. And it feels like it would be weird to do that for older shows that aren't really relevant right now. Just like, I feel like I could talk about those in another way and bring them up. So there's been some shows like, for instance, School Live or Gakko Gurashi, which came out, a year and a half ago. Like, I had an idea to write a video that's just kind of a general review of that show, but at this point it feels like it's too late. It feels like, the ship has kind of sailed on just writing a standard review of that show. I'd much rather fit it into something more broad and talk about its strengths elsewhere. For me, it seems like when you're going to talk about an older show, then the only real reason to bring it up again is if I'm going to do it in depth. Something like what I've been doing with Evangelion, you know, where it's a super old show. Everyone said everything about it in terms of like, you know, reviews and analysis. Like you can fucking throw a stone and hit someone telling you why Ava's good, but you know, no one's done it on that like incredibly detailed art design breakdown level like I was doing it when I was doing Ava videos. So like when it comes to older shows, I'd much rather have ones that I'm like doing to completion than ones that I'm just writing an analytical review of, because to me like no show is really done being talked about until you've broken it down all the way, you know. And I have to pick my battles with that. It's not like I'm going to break down every single anime ever to the full extent that I would the Asterisk War or Sword Art Online for bad ones, or you know, for K-On! For good ones. Like it's got to be ones that interest me, that I want to break down on that deep level. Hopefully that all makes sense, because uh, yeah, I've kind of, because I've taken that mindset, I've kind of narrowed down what shows I want to talk about. Like there's some older shows that I want to break down in extensive detail, like Ava. Ava is one of them where I still, you know, I'm sure I will still have more to say about Ava in the long run. And like, so there's shows like that which I will probably keep coming back to and break down as deeply as possible. And then, you know, I've kind of got that list, and then there's the other shows that will all just fit into context of bigger projects. So, going forward, essentially, there's three kinds of videos I really see myself making in the future. There's big, long, super fucking heavy projects. There's the more general, broad, short form analytical stuff like, you know, hiding anime sex appeal in plain sight. The next video I've got coming out is another similar one. Ones that are just about like anime in general, and like different, usually to do with criticism of anime. Because I don't know why I've just got such a fucking bugbear about how anime is talked about. But um, but yeah, like there's those ones, and then there's the more general review stuff, which will probably mostly be for modern shows. And if I'm gonna do that kind of stuff, I'd like to kind of not have all of them have to be like these edited videos. I'd like to be more quick and reactionary and cover more ground with that kind of stuff. So that's why, you know, I've said a bunch of times that I want to introduce vlogging style content to the main channel. And what I really want the vlogs to be is to cover all the other stuff, like to do the short form analytical reviews. And I could do this for older stuff too, just as long as it's not a whole project, you know? Like to me, going back and watching, let's say, all 26 episodes of looking around for something like XL Saga, like, which I'm not even that big a fan of, but like to go back and watch all of that and then just write an analytical review of XL Saga would be weird to me. But to do it and then just make a quick vlog, you know, like the way I do with my finish or fail videos on the After Dark channel, that makes a lot more sense to me, to just like hammer through like my opinions of every show. And really it was a combination of the finish or fail videos and the like my thoughts on that I did for shows like Bleach and Naruto, where it's just like, you know, I'd like to have my opinions out there for like every show, but doing a whole project on every show is just excessive when I don't have that much of interest to say about them. So really the three kinds of videos I'm talking about doing are super in-depth videos, general analysis videos, and then just like tons and tons of review vlogs. And I'd like that to be like the three pillars of my content. So you're probably going to see a lot of like simplistic reviewy vlogs start coming out from me. And if you're thinking, if you watch those and you think like, I miss when you went like super in depth about shows, like it's just that those are not shows I would cover that way. You know, anything I would cover in extensive depth, I would make that kind of video about. But there's tons and tons of shows that I just have a little bit interesting stuff to say about it, you know, like maybe one little point to make, but dedicating all my time, like dedicating the amount of time it would take to make a fully edited video for those takes away from the time I can spend working on these bigger projects. So, you know, the reason I want this separation to happen is that there's been so many months going by now where, you know, I'm thinking I want 4 videos out this month, so one's going to be, you know, a part in a major project, and then 3 are going to be like, what can I come up with? And when I do just like a review of just a current show, it always kind of feels like I put too much time into it. You know, something like and paid, you know, Devu to edit them when maybe editing wasn't even necessary for those videos. You know, something like Yuri on Ice. Like, I mean, that that ended up being edited to the fullest because Devu edited it. But the way it was originally supposed to be was just a discussion video that I was gonna lightly edit, and that's more likely what I would do for other big current shows, as opposed to fully edited videos for them. So, I have a list here of all the big projects that I still want to do, and it's pretty long and will probably take me years and years to do. But these are all the things that like I know I want to talk about in depth at some point. And so I'm telling you all these so you kind of know what to look forward to, that like you know, if going forward you start thinking, well, I noticed Digi's doing a lot of review vlogs and he's also doing a lot of general knowledge about anime kind of videos, but where's the big projects? Because all of these will take time to do. Here's all the big projects that I will eventually get around to. The first big one is obviously the one I'm working on right now, which is this dissecting Shaft. That's going to take a fucking eternity to do. Hopefully I can get it done within 6 months, like the writing part at least. I have no idea how long it'll take because the first couple videos are by far the hardest because I'm going to start off by covering each of Shaft's directors, each guy who's worked for Shaft, and to do that I'll watch everything they've worked on. So by the time I get through all the directors, I'll have seen every Shaft show, and then doing everybody else who works for Shaft will be a lot easier because I'll have already seen all the stuff. But there's a lot. There's a lot to watch for all of these videos. So dissecting Shaft will definitely take a while, but it's my biggest priority out of big projects. I definitely want to eventually cover Gundam, particularly the Universal Century Gundam series, and to write about Char Aznable and why he's such a great character. It's something I've just wanted to do forever. It'd be really cool. It's just a matter of setting aside enough time to watch all of UC Gundam. I still plan to do more videos about Evangelion. I think there probably will be a point where I finally feel done with it. I think after the fourth movie finally comes out, I'll probably cover it in more depth. Though I finally watched the third movie and I absolutely hated it. So we'll see about that. I might cover K-On! In more depth too, just because it is my favorite anime. And while I said the majority of what I have to say about it in the Loving Thesis video, and I might do some kind of remake of that video, like to give it footage properly and put it on the main channel, because it's really a shame that it's kind of off to the side somewhere. I'd like to revoice it because I'm not very satisfied with my vocal delivery in that video. But, you know, that may or may not happen. Maybe I'll even rewrite it, but like, there might be more to say about K-On! Than what I've said in that, and if there is, I'll probably cover it eventually, but it's not a high priority. I also eventually want to talk about Lucky Star, but that's also not a super high priority. I definitely want to do a career overview of Hiroyuki Imaishi, my favorite anime director. I want to write something like novel length about him. Like, I want it to be publishable as a book and then also as a video kind of thing, because there's just a lot to say about Imaishi and what makes him so great, and I want to cover all his shows in depth. I plan to make a top anime of the year for 2016. You know, you've been seeing my Finish or Fail vlogs. That's all been me in the effort of trying to watch all the 2016 shows so I can eventually make a list video. So I'm going to try to get back on the grindstone for that and get it done by the end of February. Would be really nice, but we'll see. It'll probably be in multiple parts just to make it manageable. I want to start talking more about manga and light novels. Not really any specific one, it's just that I haven't really done it. You know, I feel weird that I don't cover a lot of manga and light novels. I've been reading more lately, I've been buying more of them lately. The biggest hurdle for me when it comes to talking about manga and light novels, really, is that I read them in the official releases. Like, I just go out to the store and buy them and read them, and like, you know, most people have read ahead of me or have, you know, finished the series even, whereas I'm reading volume by volume. So it's a lot harder to talk about stuff without it being kind of irrelevant to everyone who's already read further. You know, that's why I've always had trouble covering manga. But I might write about some of the completed series that I'm a big fan of, and that would definitely be interesting. I want to cover the rest of the Monogatari series, probably as soon as it's finished, because I think there's just the third movie, which just came out in theaters in Japan, and then there's I think it's out, and then I think they're gonna do one more season of the show, and that'll wrap it up. So once it's over, I'll probably go through and cover the rest of it, continuing from where I left off in my previous video. Definitely want to do more about Cowboy Bebop eventually. Devu had a great Cowboy Bebop video idea called Top 100 Moments in Cowboy Bebop that I'd actually legitimately like to do. At some point I want to cover all of Precure, but I have to watch all of Precure, and that'll take an eternity, so that's very low priority. I'll probably eventually talk about Revolutionary Girl Utena and the director Kunihiko Ikuhara, just because he's an interesting guy. If I don't get around to it, someone else surely will. I mean, there's lots of writing about him and his work online, but not a lot of video, so I feel like someone will get to it. But more importantly than him, I do want to talk about Yamada Naoko, the director of K-On!, and Tamako Market. Because even though K-On's my favorite anime, I think Tamako Market shows even more of Yamada Naoko's skills. And particularly once I'm able to watch A Silent Voice, then that'll probably give me more material to talk about her as well. I want to make a video about Makoto Shinkai and why I think he's always been not very good. And how, like, Your Name is his first okay movie, but even that's not that great. But he's ironically become a superstar now. I still want to make videos about anime magazines and manga magazines. Anime magazines, mostly the ones that came out in the US. I obviously sent out this whole call to people to send me anime magazines way back when I opened my P.O. box. You know, I've gotten quite a few of them, but I still haven't found the time to, like, read through enough of them to start making videos about them. And I also want to cover manga magazines. That will probably not happen until I can read more Japanese and comprehend them better, but I think the culture of manga magazines is, like, really important to manga and anime and not talked about much in the West because we don't interface with it. So I'd love to talk about that one day. Probably make more videos about Gainax and Hideaki Anno because I've been a long-time fan. Gainax is practically dying now, so it'd be even easier to do that. I want to talk about the album So It Goes by Rat King. That would just be like one video, though. And I have a plan to do a video on the genre of cute girls doing nerd hobby shows. Like all these, like, Strike Witches and Upote and Kankol and even stuff like Saki, where it's all these, like, these things that are typically, like, you know, otaku guys are into, but there's a bunch of shows about cute girls doing them. Or just having, like, you know, World War II planes in their shows and stuff like that. I'd love to do, like, just a whole project on that genre, but that's another one that would require me to watch lots of shows. So that's most of the big projects that I have ideas for going forward. And, you know, if another... Actually, I should also add Shirobako, because I've always wanted to do a thing where I go through all of Shirobako and explain every reference and why the people are important and stuff like that, which would be a really fun series. So those are all the big projects that I, like, have ideas for, ones that I definitely want to do. The only problem is that most of them are really big. And getting through all those projects, like, you know, I'm still trying to grow my channel and make more money. And if I was at a point where I wasn't trying to do that, I could just focus on these probably. But because I still want to, you know, I still want to get bigger than what I am right now. You know, I need a little bit more money so that I can pay Devu better, because I really want us all to be able to have our own place. He needs his own car. And so, like, I want to make enough money that I can both sustain myself and also sustain him. And when I get to that level, I'll probably be satisfied enough that I won't have to keep making, you know, quite as many smaller videos and stuff just to pad out my income and to, you know, pad out the channel. Not that I don't like the videos I've been making in those styles. I think they're good and they're well received. But, you know, these are the projects that I'm really deeply excited about. And I have no idea even if you guys as patrons prefer those kinds of videos, or if you like the smaller stuff that comes out more frequently. You know, I just want to make sure that I get these projects underway. And yeah, so that's sort of how I'm looking at what I'm doing going forward, and I thought it might be interesting for you guys. Hopefully it was.